For the past 14 months, Vancouver's Bring Them Home leader Daphna Kedem has been putting together rallies calling for the return of the hostages. Many say that's a sane job. I religiously attended the first several dozen rallies until I realized that something doesn't feel quite right, so I did a little research and here is what I found. Coincidentally, Daphna Kedem is Vancouver's leader of the UnXeptable organization. UnXeptable is an international organization whose goal is to overthrow the Netanyahu government. Prior to October 7, Daphna and other local UnXeptable members rallied weekly in Vancouver for 28 weeks against the Israeli government. Earlier this year, UnXeptable members in the US rallied together with anti-Israel groups against Netanyahu's speech at the Congress in Washington. Their narrative is reminiscent of the pro-terror groups. They called for immediate ceasefire and for cutting diplomatic ties with the Israeli government. Back in Vancouver, another local UnXeptable member is David Berson. Up until mid-November 2024, David was on the board of directors of JSpaceCanada. JSpaceCanada is an organization that advocates for applying pressure on the Israeli government and sanctioning Israeli members of parliament, but never for applying pressure on Hamas's sanctions against the Islamic regime of Iran. Recently, JSpaceCanada called for the Canadian Parliament to reward Hamas for its terror attack by unilaterally and unconditionally recognizing a Palestinian state. JSpaceCanada insists that Canada fund UNRWA, even though substantial evidence shows that many UNRWA employees are members of Hamas. JSpaceCanada reposts the false feminine Gaza accusations against Israel by the National Council of Canadian Muslims. They also repost content from J Street, an organization that called for the US administration to impose arms embargo on Israel. The agendas of UnXeptable and JSpaceCanada are aligned. Both are closely affiliated with the New Israel Fund. JSpaceCanada reposts New Israel Fund content. New Israel Fund promotes UnXeptable and IJV Washington protests on their media. The three organizations host joint events. Let's have a look at New Israel Fund. Among the organizations that they fund, there are numerous that promote the anti-Israel rhetoric, calling Israel an apartheid state, supporting the ICC lawfare against Israel, supporting the BDS movement and demonizing Israel by accusing it of racism, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, etc. Does that sound like a pro-Israel organization? What else is New Israel Fund known for? Recently, the New Democratic Party of Canada, NDP, issued a statement opposing the adoption of IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in Canada. New Israel Fund supported the statement alongside IJV, the Independent Jewish Voices. IJV is an openly and vocally anti-Israel and anti-Zionist organization. They reject Israel's right to exist and take part in co-organizing events and rallies together with pro-terror so-called Palestinian solidarity groups, including BDS, Palestinian Youth Movement, SPHR, the Canadian version of SJP, and Samidun, which was recently designated as terrorist in Canada and the US. And they feature Samidun members on their page. All the information I presented is publicly available for you to double-check, and all the links are available in the description of the video. Let me briefly reiterate. Daphna Kedem is the organizer of Bring Them Home rallies in Vancouver. Daphna Kedem and David Berson are Vancouver leaders of the UnXeptable organization. David Berson is also on the board of JSpaceCanada. JSpaceCanada is openly anti-Israel. UnXeptable and JSpaceCanada are affiliated and aligned with New Israel Fund. New Israel Fund sponsors BDS and other anti-Israel movements. New Israel Fund and IJV opposes the IHRA definition. IJV is an openly anti-Zionist movement closely affiliated with BDS and Samidun. Conclusion: the organizer of the Vancouver Bring Them Home rallies is just one link away from anti-Zionist Jews as well as actual terrorists. It is time for us to realize some Israel's strongest supporters are non-Jewish, like Yosef Haddad and Douglas Murray. Some of our enemies are Jewish. Whether you call yourself a Zionist or an anti-Zionist does not really make a difference if you advocate for arms embargo against Israel and for cutting diplomatic ties with Israel. Some Jews like Avi Lewis and Rabbi Meva Seir do it openly. Some like Daphna Kedem and David Berson are hostile in disguise. It pains me to break it to you, but we cannot win a war if we keep lying to ourselves and confusing enemies for friends.